You are about to journey against the current of contemporary thought and beyond the troubled waters of daily news to the very source of our extraordinary culture. You are going upstream with Cashel and Edge.
Well, Loy, I know it's not Christmas Day. That falls on a Monday, the day our feature is usually released, but it's Christmas season. And you being the resident Grinch of this operation, I thought that perhaps you could introduce.
That's fair.
I think.
By the way, hi, Jack.
Well, hi, Loy. How are
It's
you?
nice
sir?
to be here with you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Upstream with Cashel and Edge.
That's the name of our show. But
we don't do a special holiday version with Bing Crosby and the kids and everybody coming out.
No. Although I used to like those shows when I was a kid, and I still listen. This is how bad I am, because I know it goes off on the 27th, but the Sirius channel, usually reserved for the 40s, does Christmas music for the whole season, and that's where I park, beginning like in Thanksgiving.
Is that right?
Yep.
A traditionalist, are you?
I am that, and
you can even sit through the Bing and. How come they told me, bum. Not again. No, never.
Yeah, the little drummer boy is a little much, but what they do though, which I like, is that they have they don't do the modern stuff. It's all pretty traditional, which is a mix of really beautiful spiritual music and trashy 50s Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph. Chipmunks,
Grandma run over by reindeer, and the whole deal.
Jingle Bell Rock, and things like that. Wayne Newton singing Jingle Bell Rock. But no, I thought that today we would turn it over to our resident Grinch, because you have expressed an idea that will come, I think, as will strike some people as not out of character for you, but as an unlikely theme. And the bizarre thing is that I agree with you entirely on this. Although it'll take the audience some adjusting that they'll think less of us after we introduce what we're going to talk about.
Well, that's because we've all been collectively shamed to the point where we all feel this overwhelming guilt, and we're just happy to let those smarter than us, greater than us come in and just fix it for us.
That's right.
So we aren't so damn bad and evil, selfish and manipulative and all those things. It's just self-centered. I mean, at least through the glory of stolen largesse. Now, we talked about stolen, what was the last one we had with I can't even remember.
But it was a good one. You have a way of coining phrases, unfortunately.
They come and go.
Given your advanced age.
Yeah, I just forget about it, It's like, man, I was drunk. I really came up with a funny one there, yeah.
No, but stolen largesse rings. It has a ring to it.
Yeah. And that's what goes on in the parking lots. I mean, the stolen largesse plays out big time in our parking lots. And it's a good example of a lot of things we talk about.
Right. It's
a great example of the zero sum versus zero base. Now, the left is big on the zero sum thinking and the zero sum approach to things. They'd say, well, there's only 400 parking spaces in this lot. Let's not get into this too deeply, but how can we chop this up and divide it up so that it's more fair in our minds than it is just with people with their cars? I mean, first come, first serve, that is wrong.
Right, absolutely.
If you get there first and you park in the most desirable place, you might be white.
Yeah, right.
You might be a male. You might be some fat white male guy.
Right, with all the privilege that the world can bestow upon you.
Everything it's coming your way anyhow, and here you are with the damn parking space, and meanwhile, somebody who's not as white as you are, or maybe they're not as male as you are, they gotta walk around.
That's it.
And it's not fair. And you probably got a big car that's an SUV that's been tax incented for you to have some big old monster gas guzzler, even though we're all trying so hard in our media to talk about how bad those are and how you should stop it, and they should all be electrical and just smart cars or something, but then we still have these big tax incentives for people to buy these 6,000-pound land barges and drive them around.
You're a strange one, Mr. Grinch.
I am odd, I know. But what I noticed is the proliferation of signage.
Yes.
It's getting worse.
It's getting worse, right?
We've got special parking spaces now for, well, first of all, I never got the thing with the handicap. The handicap is such a, I mean, who determined, that's handicap, that's not, stamp, yes, no, yes. Well, excuse me, but don't people who are handicapped it's kind of like the joke about I rang the doorbell, didn't I? Where they go to the at the house of prostitution and they keep getting the doorbell rung and they can't figure out, and nobody's at the door, and there was a guy down there with no arms and no legs down there going, hey, and they're like, what are you doing here? Well, this is a house of prostitution. Well, I rang the doorbell, didn't I? That kind of show. Well, anyway, the pregnant mothers, expectant mothers now have their own spaces.
Well, so do people who are afraid of COVID. They get to sit in their cars while the people inside have to run their pizza out or whatever they're delivering, reserved for pickup.
That thing was really weird because that happened before COVID.
The reserve for pickup?
Yes.
But it amplified under COVID.
Oh, it came because COVID was a-coming, and they knew it.
They anticipated it. Yeah.
Well, they somehow knew it.
Yeah.
Because they didn't just anticipate it. They went in and they took all the remaining good parking spaces for their Walmart or whatever, and they rededicated these to some unknown thing where there was no demand. There was no demand for it.
Yes.
Which was people pulling up, sitting there, getting their groceries brought out after they called them in or interneted them in or whatever.
Right.
And I was in the Walmart, and I knew something was up. This was a good 8 months before COVID.
Right.
And I saw this, and I thought, this does not make sense. This is zero-sum thinking taken to the next level because if you're a business human, and you want to provide usually convenience,
yes,
and proximity for your customers, because your goal is to get more of them in there and to make them happier with the experience. Well, all of a sudden, at the neighborhood Walmart, they take 20 of the best parking spaces and they put some bizarre signage up that says reserved for pickup orders of the. And it's like, wait a minute, what are they doing? Well, what they were doing was they knew that this so-called pandemic.
They were conditioning us.
Yeah, it was coming, and for reasons that I guess nobody can still talk. Is it okay for us to talk about this yet?
I don't know, man. Maybe not yet. Maybe in the calendar year 2024 we'll be able to talk about it. But that should be our next episode.
But they've got new categories.
Right. There's a Key and the Key and Peele. These guys.
Oh yeah, talked about them doing some deal with Nick Searcy that was so funny.
Yeah, and they're a pair of black comedians. They're very good, and they don't fall into the normal trap of what black comedians are supposed to say and do. They have a very wide range of stuff.
It's sophisticated humor.
It is very sophisticated.
It goes all the way from shucking and jiving, doing the step and fetch it thing, all the way up to really, really sophisticated humor.
But in this one there was, which is pretty universal, the Key or Peele, he gets to the airport and he has this thing, boarding group number 1,
Right.
And then he says, I'm going to be in boarding group number 1 this time. And then they'll start by, would families with children please come up first, and then they go, veterans now can board, pregnant women now can board, clergy now can board.
This is where the
Right.
leftist circular thinking
Right.
always eats itself.
Right.
It always comes around to the point where it's diminishing return.
Right.
And then it's like, why did we even start all this crap in the first place? Here we are back at chaos, ground zero, which is the ultimate goal, is just to disassemble, to take everything apart, put in their new chaos, and go, there you go. Now God's got his thumb on it. 'Cause
Okay.
we did it.
I'm going to join you in Grinchland now by talking about what I thought at the time was a terrible piece of legislation, which I railed against, sounding very much like a Grinch.
George W. Bush, or George H.W. Bush.
1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act.
What a disaster.
Yeah, you could see it coming. You could see every sleazeball lawyer in America just rubbing their hands together.
It was completely undefined.
Yeah,
At the time, I had businesses down in Westport at the time.
right.
And they were 150-year-old buildings and
Yeah,
stuff. And
right.
I mean, it was just like everybody was just on tenterhooks. They had no idea. What do I do? Where do I go? No lawyer could give you an answer. No cops could give you an answer. No city officials could tell you, well, you just got to do this. There were no definitions. It was like a feelings-based thing.
And there was like a codicil in the bill that said reasonable effort has to be made, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the question is, who determines what reasonable is?
That's it.
Yeah.
How do these idiots think that reasonable steps must be taken is in any way any kind of legalese?
Right.
You read this stuff and it's like you said, you can see it coming. There's nothing but trouble here.
And it's federal.
It's
so what that
federal.
means, the federal government now has taken control of your property.
That's right.
And they can tell you what to do with that property.
What colors to paint it, what words you have to say, what size the sign is,
Right.
what color is the pavement, how far away is it? Do you need yellow stripes? Do you need to build a little elevated area so that people who aren't handicapped can trip on it and break their ankle and become handicapped?
Right.
Because that's happened to me 3 times. I've fallen on those damn things that they...
And if handicap simply meant people in wheelchairs,
Right.
it'd be one thing.
Yeah.
You could accommodate your business to that, presuming you didn't have a 150-year-old business in a brick building that
Right.
could never accommodate an elevator, or it just. I mean, it was always going to be inconvenient for people in wheelchairs. It wasn't
And
much.
plus, how did the guy in the wheelchair get in the car to get there?
Yeah.
It's like, to me, it seems like a really heavy 60-year-old woman with a bad back who's not officially handicapped has got a hell of a challenge compared to one of these people in one of those super deluxe wheelchairs where you push the button and the thing opens up and your wheelchair goes out and shuts the key off for you, and you tool along 20 feet to the front door, and meanwhile some old lady's like having to walk out and getting robbed in the corner and all that stuff.
Right, because at 3/4 of the people, I mean, God bless people in wheelchairs. I have no, I don't begrudge them any moment of their lives, and most of them know that, who are genuinely handicapped, that life is a series of hardships, compromises. Yeah. That's right, and I will say this: is I have a blind friend, young man, whom I drive places and
Greg,
take places.
my friend.
Yeah. And what I will say this is that he doesn't know this. And since I'm older than he, people think I'm his father. He's a young man. And you can't believe how well people treat us, right? He doesn't know that other people aren't treated that well.
Right.
Because our nature is such that we want to accommodate people. We want to make their lives better, especially for people who are like born blind or consigned to a wheelchair for the rest of their life. We want to make that effort ourselves. We don't want our largesse stolen.
Right.
And that's when you proposed this theme. I said, boy, you're really hitting on something here, because I've been, even in my dealings with Greg, who is very accommodating and who appreciates everything people do.
He got in the car. I gave him a ride.
Yeah.
In my old Chrysler, he goes, "Oh, 6-cylinder V6."
He could hear it.
He goes, "That's a V6."
Yeah, yeah.
It's like that's amazing.
No, he has a compensatory audio capabilities. But I was thinking about this one when we go to a place. He has a placard. We hang it up.
Yeah.
And I'll take advantage of it. So we park right in front of a place. Well, he can walk better than 90% of the people are going into the thing.
Right.
I mean, he needs someone to guide him, but
right.
But we don't need that parking space.
No, and
you know who we're fighting for it with?
Old people usually.
No. Frauds.
Frauds.
People who've stolen or somehow finagled the placard,
Oh, so
we see them all the time.
They've got stolen largesse.
They've stolen the government's stolen our largesse.
Right.
And then they've stolen it from the government. So
right.
It's stolen largesse cubed or squared,
And that's really the problem,
right.
Because that's what happens is to our society is we become less trusting and there is less largesse.
Right.
The largesse is gone in that. When you look
right.
at it and they go, they've processed the largesse to the point where they've taken all the nutritional value out of it.
That's
now it's
well
just,
said. Yeah.
Now it's just
Wonder
bullshit.
Yeah,
it's
right.
just more trouble for everybody. It's just another box to check.
Right.
It's just another thing to mutter about under your breath as
right.
you're sitting there freezing your ass off trying to find a place to park.
Right.
And they're all empty. Like I can remember when they built that Dale's racquetball courts way back in the 70s. And it was one of the first places that they built where they had to put all those handicap spaces up.
Right.
And it was a racquetball court.
Yeah, right. That's, yeah.
And I thought, this is so ridiculous.
Or the Braille signs at the ATM.
Yeah.
Where you drive through and you hit the Braille. Oh, okay. How many blind people are driving into an ATM? Not
exactly.
so many.
Not
right?
a lot. But these things with the... it was a friend of mine. She was talking to me on the phone. She was trying to get into this store, and she's like, "Lloyd, there's another sign. There's a new row of signs here for expectant mothers. The person who needs the parking space up close is the mother with 3 kids.
No,
just
right.
had them that has them.
That's it.
With all the junk and the crap and the bags and
right.
It's like expectant mother.
Right.
Just get out of the car and walk.
Yeah, you got into the car to drive there, A little exercise is good for that child,
That's right.
Actually, literally it is, No, it's so arbitrary, and a lot of it has to do with your, obviously your lobbying power, and
right.
And it's all based on exploiting the largesse of normal people who care for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate because it strips us of our natural instincts. We become cynical.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see a person pull into a parking space with a handicap spot now, I just want to pull out my cell phone camera and check them out, because half of them are scamming,
I just get up and go, "Hey, wait a minute. How do I know? Let me see if you got a limp."
Right.
You don't seem to have a limp. I don't know if you have papers. I want to see your medical papers.
Right.
No, but people do that. I've seen people, call people out because they didn't have a hitch in their giddy up.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah.
I guess when you park, if you got a heart condition or something and people can't tell,
right,
and you've got the handicap thing and you're using it, you better put a hitch in your giddy up when
yeah.
you're getting out of the car, just for show.
To validate your presence there,
So people don't have to have their unlargesse come
right.
out at you.
That's right. You don't feel good about yourself for doubting the legitimacy of some other human being. You'd rather not be put in that position. But they're taking your space. You're 100 feet away and you have to walk. It's cold, it's raining, whatever. Usually it's not bad. If it's just a normal day, you don't care. But it's only on those days when it's raining, that all the handicap spots are taken by people who weren't handicapped on sunny days,
That's right.
So it does not do wonders for you. When the original bill was passed in 1990, I objected, and I remember people thinking,
me
"How
too.
could you possibly
How could you object to that?"
And then, because I said, look at it, read this. It's so arbitrary and so vague. We know that who's going to be determining how it is implemented are trial lawyers.
That's right. And it ruins any opportunity that culture and society has to do what it does best, which is our capitalist or whatever you want to call our type of society, is we address issues constantly. We're constantly refining our systems, processes, reports, everything we do as a society. We're constantly looking for improvements
so that we have an edge up over our competition.
So what they've done is they've stolen that now and they've made it a zero-sum thing.
Right.
Now they're saying, oh, no, now it's for the lawyers. Now we're all going to meet it out. Now we're going to determine who gets what slice of this convenience. We're going to determine who gets what slice of this security, all these things. And then we're going to dictate to every landowner exactly what they have to do with this property, even though they have to still maintain it, pay taxes on it.
Right.
And all this, we're going to tell them, back to your point, exactly how they must utilize it. And we're going to fine them if they don't do exactly what we say.
And then if you don't pay your fine, we're just going to take your property away.
We're going to take your property away.
And that's what it comes down to. Now, what's interesting about it, even at the time it struck me, is that the way they listed what a handicap is. At first it was pretty narrow, and they were very specific, people, and yet,
like always, these things just grow like
someone has to write this stuff up. And so if you were blind, or if you were, if you were paralyzed, or lacking limbs or whatever, okay, we get that. Those are the things that you didn't need to tell us, because as a business owner, if I'm successful and I'm trying to expand my base, and I'm trying to tell the community at large that I'm a good person, I'm implementing all these things to the degree that I can afford to implement them. Mm-hmm. And then I get rewarded for that, because people say, hey, Loy Edge's restaurant, he's taken that extra step to accommodate, people in wheelchairs or people who are blind or whatever. But that's all gone now, because
that's all gone.
Right.
You can't give that extra.
Right. And then, of course, we know that once these people get their feet in the door, not the handicapped people, but the people exploiting the handicap, and they'll be there forever. So we have the 1990. It's a bookended deal. That was when I lost faith with George H.W. Bush. I said, this guy doesn't understand free enterprise. He doesn't understand the Constitution.
Yep.
I mean, he proved as much, in the next 2 years. But in 2008, they expanded the list, right? And now they're including ADHD, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're including
Promulgate and solutionize.
Right.
Create the problem.
Right.
ADHD. Oh, you mean maleness? Yeah. ADHD.
And how do you accommodate? And so this goes into the schools, because now the schools, all these people, if you're autistic or whatever, you have to be accommodated. So you have to have special programs set aside for you. You have to have your own special teachers and training materials. And meanwhile, you're expanding the bureaucracy, you're expanding the cost, and you're limiting the genuine service that might be delivered to 98% of the students, because everyone now has a disease. Everyone.
It's the collective victim culture.
Yeah, yeah.
And it has to be collective.
Right.
Because the primacy of the individual, that is over. It's just not fair.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. I was reading before the show, I was reading the bill, right? The 2008 bill. And then they said, here are some of the things that aren't considered a handicap. Pedophilia. I said, wow, that's great. That's good.
Not yet.
Not yet.
However, I'm sure there's emotion and I'm sure there's something somewhere.
Well, what they have added, though, is to the list of handicaps, but they had to take it off because it has to be mainstream, is gender dysphoria.
Really?
Yeah. Now, you can imagine
So I can park my Barbie car there? Is what you're saying?
You could park your Barbie car any place. You can take it in a handicap spot, sure, yeah.
Okay.
And if you get out of it, if they say you getting out of a Barbie car, they'll believe that you are really one screwed up dude.
That's true.
Ken. Barbie's coming to TV, by the way, so it was a massive hit this year. Gender dysphoria.
Yeah, that's cool.
But here's the odd thing.
I didn't even know that.
It's new, so that's recent. Just gender dysphoria means you're confused about your sexuality. So now there's a double game being played here because gender dysphoria, you're basically, if you're classifying it as a disease that allows you to get all the benefits of having a disease, you are then denying it as a preborn condition that is just a natural part of human nature, right? So for instance, homosexuality used to be listed in the American Psychiatric Association as a disorder, right? Until homosexual activists, they actually did this in San Francisco, where they're meeting their annual meeting. They stormed their annual meeting and browbeat these poor
politically browbeat them to taking it out. Yeah,
that's right. And then the same thing happens, I believe.
Trust the science, Jack. Just trust the science. And if you don't trust it, beat the shit out of it. That's what I always say.
I mean, how hard could it be to beat up a room full of 80-year-old psychiatrists? You know, I mean, it's they were, even at 20, you could beat them up. You know, just like so they had to vote on it, right? You can see all these like withered hands go, oh, yeah, no, it's no longer a disease. we've seen the light now. It's no longer a disease. But if it's no longer a disease, you guys don't get a parking space anymore, So you don't get to go on airplanes first if it's not
Life's
a disease.
just filled with trade-outs, isn't it? Yeah. When the government's involved, that's for damn sure.
When I was in advertising, in fact, this came up, and I did a lot of healthcare advertising, and I was pitching the biggest healthcare system in New Jersey, in fact, their mental health and alcohol treatment center. That was a scam, but and we did advertising for it. And so I really hit it off with these people because I'm from that part of the world and we speak the same language. And it was funny because the day I was there, we went to the cafeteria. You only see this in New Jersey. And someone was walking through line. It's like a buffet line. And there's a worker behind the line. And there was some altercation. I didn't quite catch it. I'm going to use some bad words here, so bear with me because it's New Jersey-ese. It doesn't work if you don't use them. And the guy who's in the food line says, hey, asshole, right? And the other guy says, who'd you call an asshole? I called you an asshole, right? Uh-huh. This isn't a food line at a hospital. Then the worker jumps over the counter, and they get into a physical altercation, And I said, I said to the woman I was with, it's good to be back in New Jersey. It just seems like you don't see that. You really don't see that in other parts of the world. But in my conversation with her, I'd come down to the finish line where I'm about ready to get the contract. I could tell it was going very well. And then she says, okay, Jack, there's one thing I need to know. I said, what's that? Do you consider alcoholism is a disease, And I said, well, I know what you want me to say, yes, but I'm going to tell you no, it's not a disease. And she says, what do you think it is? I said, it's a weakness. It's a character flaw. And she stares at me like, how could you possibly say that?
Do you really want to unsay that?
No, I mean, I said, let me explain. I said, we're both Irish descent, right? In our grandfather's generation, they were all alcoholics. In our parents' generation, they were heavy drinkers, but they weren't alcoholics. In our generation, they're light drinkers. If it's a disease, it's not being genetically transmitted. It's a social condition. You grew up you live in a house, you go home, there's 8 squalling children, you're going to the local bar. You want to hang out there, and inevitably you drink too much and whatnot. And then I said to her, my attitude, I'm the person you've got to convince because I'm a skeptic. I'm not buying disease, right? And they hired me, which is good. So, but it's the diseasification of every disorder, except when you want to mainstream that disorder into thinking that it's a perfectly part of natural human development, right? So if you're gender dysphoric or if you're homosexual or if you're you're right. Pedophilia is next. That can't be too far
now
away.
The problem is when they start addressing these things as a collectivist issue, like you're talking about. The bottom line is there's never a benefit. What happens is they always assign it a benefit. They claim it's for a benefit. But what really happens is just like what happens with the parking in the ADA.
Yeah.
The spaces go unused.
Right.
Nobody gets to use them. The 70-year-old lady who has to walk, she just has to walk further. I'm sorry.
Right.
But it's cold out. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Sorry, Millie. Tough break, tube steak. You got to walk. But all these handicap spaces are empty. That's the way it goes. That's the way it works. And look, there aren't any expectant moms. Senior citizens aren't parking there. Here are all the pickups for all the groceries from the people who don't use that because they don't do it. They're all empty.
Yeah.
Now everybody's got to park out in BF England.
Right.
To get into Target or whatever it is. Everybody.
Yeah.
Now all of you. So the bottom line is it's a tragedy of the commons every time the government gets involved.
Right.
Every time.
Yeah.
Because they're going to fix it, right?
Yep.
Well, they don't fix it. And the scammers are using the spaces now. And there's nobody to police the scammers. And everybody's feeling ashamed. And they're all walking around slouching. And that's the ADA. And
here's the most expensive part of the ADA for businesses and for states are the scam lawyers. And they hopped on this immediately. They just saw a gravy train
Exactly.
and they got on board. And what they do is this. They'll find some, maybe even imagine a client, or they'll find some homeless guy.
Right. They did this all the time back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah. And they're still doing it.
In the 90s, I mean.
They're still doing it. And they'll take them for a ride, and they'll find some mom and pop shop that doesn't have a ramp or something.
That's right.
And then they'll sue the mom and pop.
Yeah.
And they'll shake them down, basically.
It's a shakedown.
There's no trial. It's never going to go to trial. They'll just say to the mom and pop, $75,000 and we're out of your hair.
Yeah.
Until the next scam lawyer comes along and does that.
We had scammers doing working Westport, some guy in a wheelchair that scammed everybody and do drawings and fake drawings and all this, and basically just getting a fat bar tab at every place that he could go. And it was just all kinds of stuff. But the real cost, Jack, is the opportunity cost. What happens when they do that, when they say, all right, we're going to put cement partitions and we're going to do this and sign this and lock this door and do all this, they're taking that zero-sum approach and they're locking us into it. And what really should have happened with all that money they spent on ADA, they stopped all these people from opening businesses because people couldn't afford it.
Right.
They couldn't put elevators here and there and do all this. Old buildings went fallow. Things didn't get developed. Things didn't happen. People who were scraping together on a bootstrap trying to get a business open, they couldn't do it because now the cost of entry was too high. The barrier of entry is too high. Well, what else happened was instead of saying it wasn't the government's business to get involved in this in the first place. We all know that.
Right.
Solving problems like this is not their deal.
No.
But had they wanted to take an activist role in fixing whatever this undefined problem is that they were fixing,
right,
they could have said, you know, we're setting aside funds, development funds, for innovative companies who want to build walking wheelchairs that go up and down stairs and do all this. And
right.
These things that are going to happen anyway. It's almost that they got to rush and get all this crap ahead of it and build up all this crap before the problem gets solved.
Yeah.
And then things work out like they always do anyway when you're in a free market economy. But when you get the government getting involved, now the next thing now it's like you've taken all the incentive away from people to fix the problem.
That's right.
Now we're all living in this world of how many rickety chairs and objects and things can we throw in the way of everybody. How many pieces of cement can we throw in the middle of a parking lot so that normal people without the best eyesight can trip and fall on their ass and break their leg on it?
Right.
Because that's happening all the time.
Yep. And then, see what happens. The net result is of this kind of thinking, of governmental imposition of exploited stolen largesse, is you drive along a street like I did today, 135th Street in Johnson County, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a long commercial street in a modern, nice suburb. There is not one mom and pop along that whole stretch. There is not one business in that several mile stretch unique to 135th Street. Because let's say you want to put a a fast food store up. I mean, first of all, you have all the local codes. They're going to discourage you if you're not. But if, let's say, just dealing with the ADA, if you're, say, Wendy's, you have an architect and a lawyer on staff. They have the same blueprint every place, and the lawyer says, okay, here's what all the scammers have forced us to do. Here's your blueprint. You just take your blueprint, you just put it down, everything's taken care of. If you're a mom and pop, if you're a startup, you've got to figure that all out yourself. And then you've got to hire a lawyer to do this who's a specialist in this. And then you've got to wait for the first scammer to come by and say, oh, you know, that initial step is 3 inches too high. For $50,000, I'll go away, and you'll have your day. The net result is there's no stores unique to 135th Street.
Yeah, and plus you've got a mom and pop, and what if you happen to be the one who's stuck behind 5 handicapped parking spaces that are all in front of your store?
Right.
Because it's just the way the dice rolled. Sorry, dude. And now you're out there and you're trying to buy your own signs, and you're taping things over that say, please, 20-minute limit, please, so that somebody can come into my little shop and buy something.
Right.
I beg of you. Please don't park here unless you have to. And it's like, this whole thing is just absurd. And so you're sitting there and you got 5 empty spaces and they're all handicapped.
Right.
And you're running your racquetball clothing store.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I'm going to digress a second, but it has to do with parking. First, I'm going to turn my phone off.
The musical digression. I love
We
that.
got a musical
go.
interlude. Isn't that pretty cool? You like that, huh? Here's a phenomenon I don't understand, and this is a slight digression, but
All right.
I think if anyone could explain it to me, you could. Why do people back into parking spots?
Well,
I get it if you're at a stadium and there's going to be a mad rush at the end of the game, but I see these people doing it all the time now. They back into a spot that you could easily pull into, right? But backing into takes a certain finesse because you've got to be, it's nice. It's easier to pull into a spot than back into a spot, right? Why do people do that?
a lot of people do it because of their neck. They don't want to jerk while they're in a hurry, like somebody's waiting for their space.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to jerk around and try to find all the mirrors and get all the blind spots taken care of while they're whipping around and doing this and twisting their neck out of shape and trying to look over their shoulder. They just want to get in there and just go forward. And they want to deal with all that manipulation on their own time so they can slowly back in and do all that. Some of them went to A&W Root Beer and Dog and Suds and all that back in the 50s and 60s and got used to backing in their car on the hot side, and they just never changed. They wanted to be the hot.
Right, but in my, in watching, we're both observers of parking spots now. In my experience, most of the people I see doing it are young males in pickup trucks.
Well, that's the A&W. People used to back in, we'd call it backing into the hot side.
Right, because it seems to me it's a whole lot easier to find the empty space behind you when you're backing out than to find that narrow space when you're backing in. It seems to me much more likely that you'll have a fender, a little scraping going on.
Mm-hmm. But you've never had that desire to back in. I've never.
I back in if I'm like at a ballpark, and I know that I want to get out. Right, that's the only time I'll do that because you want to go out front. You want to drive out. You don't want to look around trying to get out. There's going to be a lot of cars. But that's the problem is that we become territorial about parking. Right, people have become obsessed with parking.
I don't think we'll have to worry about it for too long because they're taking our damn cars away. So.
Oh, that's right. That'll make life a whole lot easier,
Yeah.
In fact, I asked Greg, our blind friend, as a blind, we've had a lot of chance to talk. I get to experience the
There's
world.
some downtime.
Yeah.
When you're
experience the world through his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And what he misses most, what he most envies about people who can see. And his answer was very straightforward. Driving, right?
Uh-huh.
You forget how much freedom you sacrifice.
That's right.
When you don't have a car And public transportation is not made for people, who can't see, but for people who are old or crippled or handicapped or whatever. I mean, public transportation is a fantasy for young people.
If you've ever done, when I lived in LA, I used it a lot, and I did some here, mass transit and things. But for handicapped and blind people on mass transit, at least in LA, it was also a mortifying experience. Like they'd pull up, the bus would pull up, and say you've got a person in a wheelchair. Everybody has to step back, and they're yelling at everybody, step back. So the whole crowd has to get back. And then the bus, deet, 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 deet. This thing comes down. Boom. And it's just like everybody's silent, but this loud beep, beep. This guy's handicapped. Hey, look, he's handicapped. And it's just this loud noise, and the poor guy's sitting there in the chair, and then it lifts him up, and you got 20 people standing around now for the show.
Right.
And then the bus driver has to get up and walk down there and start throwing up chairs to get them against the wall so that the guy could come in on his wheelchair.
It'd be so much more cost efficient to give this guy a pass on like some ride share thing.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it's just absolutely disruptive.
And less humiliating, right. And,
totally humiliating.
Well, the last time I used public transportation at any length was I spent a week in London a few years ago. And I was staying about a block from the tube station. And as I used it a lot for that week because I had like an Oyster Pass or whatever you get to go every place. And then
not cheap, by the way.
No, they're not. And within a day, I was thinking, how does a person who's not totally fit manipulate this system, manage this, use this system? And the net result is you don't see old people out on the streets because they can't be out in the streets. Whereas in a place like the absolute opposite of London is the villages in Florida,
right,
where everyone's just driving around in a golf cart, where you can be old with dignity. You're not being forced to schlep around, or if you're small, like if you're female and you're in this press all day long, you'd have to be claustrophobic before the experience was over. Now we have.
But
I will say this:
those little carts. That's a good American solution.
That's right. That's
Here's
exactly
your damn cart.
Right.
Your own individualist cart.
Right. That's right.
Your freedom. Your liberty.
And no one's coerced you into using this, and no one coerced the villages into. For energy purposes, we want you to use electric carts. No, they use electric carts because it's just simpler and easier, and no one's in a hurry.
Right.
In that world, you go 20 miles an hour. You live in large, and then when you're finished with lunch, you just drive to the golf course and you keep on going. You don't even get out of your car your cart to. Do
you want to do that, or do you want to get on some grimy bus?
Yeah.
I mean, give me my cart, man.
Yeah, right. And what I think the bottom line of, we're digressing a little bit into transportation, but the reason they don't want you using cars or using private transportation is because it makes you a free citizen.
That's right.
You're going to vote Republican much more likely if you have your own car, your own garage, your own house, your own stake in society. Whereas if you're just a collective drone living in some high rise, utterly dependent on the largesse, the stolen largesse of the state, you'll do what they tell you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where we are today. So, well, it was good to find a fellow Grinch, though, this Christmas season. Someone who thought the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, was an utter disaster, and it still is. It's an ongoing.
Complete disaster, yeah.
I mean, people have accommodated themselves to it, but at the expense of lots of small businesses, at the expense of privacy, integrity, freedom, individuality.
Get off our back.
That's it.
Get off our back.
Right. The Grinches of the world have spoken.
That's right.
Right here on...
Take all your signs and stick them.
Upstream with Cashflow and Edge. We'll see you next week, guys. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.